Chapter 15. The villages that we captured and turned into our bases as we went along, and the forest that we slept in became my home. My squad was my family, my gun was my provider and protector, and my rule was to kill or be killed. The extent of my thoughts didn't go much beyond that. We'd been fighting for over 2 years, and killing had become a daily activity. I felt no pity for anyone. My childhood had gone by without my knowing, and it seemed as if my heart had frozen. I knew that day and night came and went because of the presence of the moon or sun, but I had no idea whether it was a Sunday or a Friday. In my head, my life was normal, but everything began to change in the last weeks of January 1996. I was 15. I left one morning with 20 members of my squad for Bauya, a small town a day's walk south of us, to get ammunition. My friends ALWG and Kanye came too. We were excited to see Juma, who was now stationed there. We wanted to hear his war stories, hear how many people he had killed. I was also looking forward to seeing the lieutenant. I hoped we might find some time to talk about Shakespeare. We walked in 2 lines on the sides of a dusty path, looking into the dense bushes with our bloodshot eyes. We arrived at the outskirts of Bauya just before sunset, and waited in the bushes as our commander went ahead to make sure our colleagues wouldn't shoot at us. We sat against trees and watched the path. The commander returned after several minutes and motioned for us to move into town. I hoisted my gun on my shoulder and walked next to Kanye and ALWG as we entered the base. The cement houses in town were bigger than the ones I had seen in other villages, and everywhere we looked were unfamiliar faces. We nodded to acknowledge other soldiers as we walked around town looking for Juma. We found him sitting in a hammock on the veranda of a cement house that faced the forest. There was a semi-automatic machine gun next to him, and he seemed lost in thought. We slowly walked up to him, but before we could scare him, he heard our footsteps and turned towards us. His face seemed to have gotten older, and he had stopped nodding when he spoke. We shook hands with him and examined his guns. "I see that you carry heavy weapons these days," ALWG joked with him. "Well, what can I say? I'm moving up from the AKs," he replied, and we all laughed. We told him that we would return to sit with him in a few minutes, and we went to load our bags with ammunition and food to take back. While we were in the ammunition house, our commander told us that Lieutenant had asked us to stay the night and that dinner was ready. I wasn't hungry, so I returned by myself to see Juma while Kanye and ALWG went to eat. We sat quietly for a while before he started talking. "I'm going on a raid tomorrow morning, so that I might not see you before you leave." He paused, fingering the side of the machine gun, and continued. "I killed the owner of this gun in our last raid. He took a lot of us out before I could get him. Since then, I've used it to do some damage myself." He chuckled, and we high-fived each other and laughed. Immediately after that, we were ordered to report to the nightly gathering in the yard at the center of town. It was a social event for commanders to mingle with everyone else. Juma picked up his gun and put his arm around my shoulder as we walked into the yard. ALWG and Kanye were there too. They'd already started smoking. Lieutenant Jarbati was there too. He was a little jovial that night. Most of his colleagues, the Staff Sergeant Mansoure and Corporal Gaddafi, had died, but the lieutenant had miraculously managed to stay alive, unscarred. He had also been able to replace his dead colleagues with other men who were fierce and disciplined. I wanted to talk to the lieutenant about Shakespeare, but he was busy going about the gathering, shaking everyone's hands. When he finally stood in front of me, he held my hand tight and said, "Macbeth shall never be vanquished until great Birnam Wood to high Dunsinane Hill shall come against him." He nodded at me and said loudly to everyone, "I shall take leave of you fine gentlemen," and he bowed and waved as he left. We raised our guns in the air and cheered. After the lieutenant had gone, we began singing the national anthem. "High we exalt thee, realm of the free, great is the love that we have for thee," and marching and smoking and sniffing the cocaine and brown that was in abundance in Bauya. We chatted all night, mostly about how good the drugs were. Before morning, Juma and a few others left for their raid. ALWG, Kanye, and I shook hands with him and promised that we would catch up more on our next visit. Juma smiled, clutched his machine gun, and went running into the darkness. A few hours later, a truck came to the village. 4 men dressed in clean blue jeans and white t-shirts that said UNICEF on them in big blue letters jumped out. One of them was a white man, and another was also light-skinned, maybe Lebanese, and the other 2 were nationals, one with tribal marks on his cheeks, the other with no marks, or with marks on his hands, just like the one my grandfather gave me to protect me from snakebite. The men were all too clean to have been in the war. They were shown to the lieutenant's house. He had been expecting them. As they sat talking on the veranda, we watched them from under the mango tree where we sat cleaning our guns. After a while, the lieutenant shook hands with the two foreigners, and he called over the private who was guarding the meeting. The private ran towards us and told us to form a line. He went around the town gathering all the boys, exclaiming, "This is an order from the lieutenant." We were accustomed to taking orders and did what we were told. We formed a horizontal line and waited. The lieutenant stood before us and we saluted him, expecting to hear about our next raid on a rebel camp. "Stand at ease, boys," he said. He slowly walked along the line, the visitors a few paces behind him, smiling. "When I point at you, fall out and form a line by the private. Understand?" The lieutenant gave his orders from the far end of the line. "Yes, sir," we shouted and saluted him. The smiles on the visitors' faces disappeared. "At ease. You. The lieutenant pointed as he walked down the line. When the lieutenant picked me, I stared at his face, but he ignored me and continued his selection process. ALWG was also picked, but Kanya was left behind, maybe because he was older. 15 of us were chosen. The lieutenant then ordered, "Remove your magazines, put your weapons on safety, and put them on the ground." We laid our weapons down, and the visitors, especially the two foreigners, began smiling again. "Attention, forward march," a private ordered us, and we followed the lieutenant toward the truck the visitors had arrived in. We stopped when the lieutenant turned around and faced us. "You have been great soldiers, and you all know that you are a part of this brotherhood. I'm very proud to have served my country with you boys, but your work here is done, and I must send you off. These men will put you in school and find you another life." That was all he said. Then he smiled and walked away, asking the other soldiers to strip us of our military equipment. I hid my bayonet inside my pants and a grenade in my pocket. When one of the soldiers came to search me, I pushed him and told me that if he touched me, I would kill him. He walked away and searched a boy standing next to me instead. What was happening? Our faces followed the lieutenant as he walked to his house. Why had the lieutenant decided to give us up to these civilians? We thought that we were part of the war until the end. The squad had been our family. Now we were being taken away just like that, without any explanation. A few soldiers gathered our weapons and others guarded us to make sure that we didn't try to run for our guns. As we were ushered to the truck, I stared back at the veranda where the lieutenant now stood, looking in the other direction, towards the forest, his hands crossed behind his back. I still didn't know what was going on, but I was beginning to get angry, anxious. I hadn't parted with my gun since the day I became a soldier. In the truck were 3 MPs, city soldiers. I could tell by how clean their uniforms and guns were. Their pants were tucked inside their boots, and their shirts were tucked inside their pants. Their faces weren't hardened, and their guns were so clean I assumed they hadn't fired a shot. The weapons were on safety. The MPs jumped off the truck and motioned for us to climb in. We divided ourselves onto 2 long benches in the truck that faced each other, and 2 of the men, the one with the marks on his cheeks and a Lebanese-looking foreigner, climbed in back with us. Then the 3 MPs swung up on the back door panel, one foot inside the truck, the other hanging out. As the truck began to pull away from the base, I started boiling with anger, because I couldn't make sense of what was happening. ALWG looked at me with a puzzled face. I looked at the guns the MPs carried and envied them. The men who had come to get us smiled as the truck sped along the dirt road, raising light brown dust that covered the bushes on the sides of the road. I had no idea where we were going. We were on the road for hours. I'd gotten used to walking to places and hadn't sat in a truck or been in one place idly for this long in a while. I hated it. I thought about hijacking the truck and driving it back to Baoya, but whenever I was ready to snatch a gun from the MPs, the truck slowed down at a checkpoint and the soldiers jumped off. I had forgotten about the grenade in my side pocket of my army shorts. I was restless throughout the journey and began to look forward to the checkpoints. There were many of them, too many, so that I could get up from the boredom of the truck. We didn't speak to each other at all. We sat quietly, except at times when I winked at ALWG as we waited for the right moment to take the guns from the MPs and push them off the truck. The last checkpoint we passed that day was manned by soldiers well dressed in complete army gear. The brown polished wooden panels of their AKs were new and shiny. They were city soldiers who, like the MPs who were in the truck with us, hadn't yet been to war. They had no idea, I thought, what was really happening in the bushes in the entire country.